that's where I have a problem with it, is that we're putting sunscreen on to protect us from skin cancer, basically, and sunburn too. But I think most people are very aware of the risk of skin cancer. And so to put something on your body that when interacting with the sun turns into free radicals, which are cancer-causing, makes no sense at all to me. And the other problem with the petrochemical sunscreens are that after 2 hours in the sun, they've degraded so much that they're not effective anymore. So that's...
Hello and welcome to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. I'm Tara Bachland, the founder of Weight Free Wellness. And today, contributing podcaster Lori Rose is interviewing quite a popular mom blogger, which you'll hear about next. And they cover the topic of chemical sunscreens, mineral sunscreens, and kids especially, what to do, how much is healthy, vitamin D, and all that good stuff. And I have to let you know that Lori Rose has put together a terrific class for us on how to make our own natural sunscreen. And for the summer, at least, this summer, it's going to be free. So you can enjoy that anytime. It's actually happening this Thursday, so depending on when you are listening to this podcast, you'll either get to join us live or you can watch it in your own free time. And you can just go to weightfreewellness.com and scroll down, you'll see the banner for it there. And she has included an e-booklet with so many great reasons why to choose to use a natural-based sunscreen, including multiple recipes, very easy recipes, and also we'll be demoing how to make that, so you don't have to translate what does this mean, but you'll actually get to see us making the recipes. So lots of very helpful information there. Lori Rose is not only a mom, a wife, so many things. She is a professor at Hill College in Texas and teaches people how to be wellness coaches, nutritionists, herbalists, and so forth. So she knows her stuff, and I'm so excited that she's sharing with us. So this podcast is a really great lead-in, some really great information on, if you're not going to make your own sunscreen, at least why to choose a mineral-based sunscreen for you and your family. So here you go. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lori Rose with Lori Rose Holistic, guest and contributing podcasting for Weight Free Wellness. And we are lucky today to be here with Katie Kimball from the blog Kitchen Stewardship. Thank you for joining us today.
So happy to be here. Thanks, Lori.
Yay! So today, Katie is going to tell us how, I love this story, how she and her family tested over 80 different sunscreens for safety and usability. So she's going to tell us everything we ever wanted to know about sunscreen and what sunscreens we could and should be using. And then she's going to talk to us a little bit about her amazing kids cooking course that my kids and I are a part of. So I just can't wait to hear everything she has to tell us. So Katie, is it true you guys really tested over 80 different sunscreens?
Yeah, in 2010, the EWG only had 20 or 40, I think. They had 40 sunscreens that they rated as like safe brands. And I thought 40, that's not that many, but I wonder like how they work, because, you know, when you try a new, really any like makeup or facial product, it's a huge gamble. And so I started calling companies and just hitting the trail, and I got 28 of those 40 the first year. And like thoroughly reviewed them, and like pages of notes and how they went on and everything. And then we just added every year since then. I get a few more, and sometimes we're retesting, like a same brand has a new formulation. And out of the 80, there's only like 7, I think, that are in my top echelon. Because if they're, you know, if you have like really awesome ingredients and it goes on well and it works great, like why even bother with a brand that has like okay, fine ingredients?
Absolutely. So it's kind of good we have options, but it's also like, since you have options, why skimp on your standards, right? So
Yep.
How excited were your kids and your husband about this experiment?
My husband's super skeptical, and I think, and I'm a little bit of a skeptic about a lot of things too, which is part of what makes us like a really good family to do stuff like this, because we start out like, I don't know if this is going to work. So he's super light skinned. He's like Irish, English descent, lots of freckles, whatever. And if he burns really badly. And so when we got married, he was using like SPF 50 to 55, copper tone sport. He referred to it as his black tarp because he thought that's like a really high SPF. It's practically like being under a black tarp. So when I'm like, I think we should, try a bunch of new sunscreens. And most of the mineral stuff is only rated SPF 30. And so he was like, if this fails, like, I'm going to be really mad. So it was marriage trial too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely relate. So I also have a spouse who refuses to use any sunscreen that he has to touch. So he's totally like spray on sunscreen. So first, can you tell us the difference between mineral sunscreens and chemical sunscreens? And then I'll ask you what I can do for my hopeless husband.
All right. Well, I don't know about the husband, but I can explain. I can explain the difference. So, of course, sunscreen has active and inactive ingredients. So the inactives are like the fats and oils, or just the carrier, what makes it feel like a lotion. And those, those are going to have potential toxicities. But really, when you look at the active ingredients, those are the most important ones. So in conventional sunscreen, which I usually refer to as chemical, but it would be more appropriate to say petrochemical. So they're made from like petroleum. They're still made from the earth, but they're chemicals, man-made. Those ingredients are going to be like avobenzone, oxybenzone, octocrylene. I don't even know how to say them all, but there's a handful. There's maybe 7 to 12 that are approved by the FDA for use in the United States. The way they work on your skin is that they actually have a chemical reaction with the sun that absorbs the energy from the sun. In any chemical reaction, you're going to have, something given off, right? So in some cases it's heat, in some cases it's other chemicals that are breaking down. In this case, I believe it's both heat and it does that. The energy of the sun does break down the chemicals, and what they break into really are free radicals. So that's where I have a problem with it, is that we're putting sunscreen on to protect us from skin cancer, basically, and sunburn too. But I think most people are very aware of the risk of skin cancer. And so to put something on your body that when interacting with the sun turns into free radicals, which are cancer causing, makes no sense at all to me. And the other problem with the petrochemical sunscreens are that after 2 hours in the sun, they've degraded so much that they're not effective anymore. So that's why we have the like reapply every 2 hours thing. It's not that, it's not that they're worried it's going to wash off or anything. It's that it literally like doesn't work after 2 hours. And some would say that, especially because now you have those free radicals bouncing around, if you add then the burning energy of the sun to those free radicals after 2 hours, like I would almost lean towards saying it's worse to apply sunscreen once and be out in the sun for 6 hours, conventional petrochemical sunscreen, than it would be to just go out unprotected. I'm not sure if that's right, but it seems like you're like adding fuel to the fire in some ways. So if you're going to use that kind of sunscreen, man, you better apply every 2 hours, reapply if you're in the sun. On the flip side, the mineral sunscreens use only 2 things, either zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Both are found naturally. Many say that zinc is a more safe choice. So I do tend to put, sunscreens that only use zinc oxide are usually higher on my list. Titanium dioxide is a heavy metal. So there's some potential there for a problem, although it's not usually absorbed. Both of those work a little differently. What they generate after the chemical reaction is just simply heat. And so it's not nearly as much of a problem for your skin and for your system. And also they don't break down. I mean, it's a mineral, right? It's like a rock. So like the sun has no massive effect on it. So if you have, zinc oxide sitting on your skin and you put your arm out in the sun for 12 hours, as long as you don't physically rub it off with a towel or wiping sweat or your clothing or whatever, it still works. It could work the next day. And people yell at me sometimes for saying that, like, that's so dangerous that you say not to reapply. I say, well, I'm not saying never reapply. Like if you're swimming and it's coming off, if you're wiping your face with a towel or if you're sweating and doing this, you have to reapply. I mean, it's just like if you physically literally took that off, just as if you took your shirt off or something. But if the zinc is still sitting on your skin, it works no matter what. So that's really awesome. And the studies show that the zinc doesn't sink into your skin. So it's really, it's so vast, the difference between them as far as like safety and unsafety. I can't even like stomach thinking about petrochemical sunscreens on my kids' skin.
So yeah, when I first learned about the difference between chemical and mineral sunscreen, and really at their root is how they work so differently, explains why one has such negative effects and one is lacking those negative effects. I realized that with my mineral sunscreen, I was kind of still living in the chemical sunscreen world and making my kids come and reapply every 2 hours. And then you made that point on your blog post that they're minerals. Minerals are inorganic. They don't decompose. They don't break down. It's still there. And if you can see it, then it's there and it's still working. So let's kind of break down some of the points you made and zoom into them. So chemical sunscreen goes into your body before it can even work. It has to be absorbed into your skin. And then it reacts with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And then it releases free radicals. Mm-hmm. So that explains one of the things that I was also doing with the mineral sunscreen that we don't have to do, is that the reason why you have to wait the whole 15 to 20 minutes for chemical sunscreen to work is it has to go into you.
That's what my initial research came up with a couple years ago. I'm not completely positive that's accurate.
Okay.
But it's close.
So the chemical reactions are happening on top of you with the chemical sunscreen as well as the mineral sunscreen. Is that more accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, the chemical, it is going to absorb, but I think I used to have a bit of a erroneous idea that it was like sinking further and further and further, and the deeper it got, the more dangerous it was.
Okay.
So that's probably not true, but your skin is your largest organ, and it does absorb anything put on it that's small enough to be absorbed. Okay, like if I set my coffee cup on my skin, obviously it's not absorbed, right? If I put lotion on my skin and the particles are small enough, it is absorbed. So those chemicals are definitely 100% being absorbed. Whether they have to be absorbed to work or not, that's where I'm not exactly sure. But a lot of studies have shown that oxybenzone, which is it's one of the most common ingredients in the petrochemical sunscreens, and it's the most toxic. It's a hormone disruptor, and they're finding it in, up 90% of human urine, including newborn babies who are breastfed.
Oh my goodness.
So it's super pervasive. It definitely goes into your system.
And didn't you say that one application of sunscreen is equal to a hormone treatment for a woman post-menopause? And that's even on a child?
That would be on an adult, like female in a bikini. So, but a child's smaller body.
Based off the child's body size.
I would think it would be similar. That was based on an interview I did with Eric Kreider, who's a biochemist trained at Stanford, founded a sunscreen company. And so like his stuff is so science geek great. But yeah, he and I did an interview 2 years ago, and that was a quote from him. And I was like,
And not to mention, even if you don't use it, they are persistent in the environment, like you said. And so they're getting in our water, it's getting in mother's breast milk. And so that's just one exposure to hormone and estrogen mimics from sunscreen. What's wrong with that? Like, who cares? We have estrogen. Why do we care if we have estrogen mimics?
Yeah, it can't be, from all the research I've done, and I would like to find something that proves me wrong on this, but synthetic hormones can't be filtered out even by the best water filters we have. Mm-hmm. So when you are swimming, when you're showering off, all that stuff's going back into our water, which is treated, but it doesn't matter for that particular ingredient. Sure, we have estrogen, but we have a nice balance, so we, I think if we look around and look at just the rates of infertility and the rates of people struggling with hormonal imbalances, you wrote an awesome series on my post about hormones and how, we're just killing ourselves with hormones. So the less exposure I can have for my kids, the better I feel, especially one that's proven to be so pervasive as oxybenzone, that it's just everywhere.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned this in your blog post as well, about the prevalence of even animals that swim in the water losing their masculinity, switching from male to female in fishes. And then humans, it's been causally linked that hormone imbalances lead to all sorts of cancers, including breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. So even though it's easy to say like, oh, well, we all have estrogen, it really is, like you said, it's about the amounts that we have. And that's just, again, one example of an estrogen mimic in sunscreen.
Right. Yeah. Some people are like, I can't avoid everything, so I don't even try. It's like, well, so I'm kind of take the opposite effect, and I say, I'm going to try to avoid everything I can and trust that hopefully our bodies can process whatever small amount of junk that obviously we are getting from our air, our water, just the life that we live. Like we don't live completely plastic free. I'm surrounded by plastic in my computers and stuff like that right now. So I can't be perfect, but when I can, I'm going to work really hard to. And for me, sunscreen is super easy because you don't really have to change anything except the tube you buy. It's not harder. You don't have to like change too much. Oh, except unless you're using the spray on. But that's
right. So let's talk about those people first, and then we'll move on to our options for mineral sunscreen. So if someone absolutely will not switch to something you have to slather on, what can they look for on the label to minimize as much as they can their exposure?
Yeah, a really good shirt and a hat. Pretty much. I mean, if you have to spray it on and you're cool with that, there aren't any mineral sunscreens that both spray and don't have to be rubbed. There are some coming out now that they do spray, but again, because zinc is a particle, like a physical particle, it's not going to be even enough in a spray. It's like too thick and chunky. So you still have to like rub it in after you spray it on.
That tube anyway, right? But with chemical sunscreens, didn't you mention that if they're choosing between the Oxy versus the Avo, is one better than the other?
Yeah, I mean, oxybenzone is definitely the worst of the worst. The trouble is, so the sun, right? There's UVA and UVB rays. UVA are the aging, cancer-causing. UVB are the burning. So you can see if your sunscreen works or not against UVB rays because you'll burn if it fails. You cannot see if it's effective against the UVA rays unless and until you get cancer, basically, or you like are old and have wrinkles, and by then it's way too late. The petrochemical ingredients typically only protect well against one or the other. So you have to have like a really good mesh. So you're not going to find like single ingredient petrochemical sunscreens. I want to say that the ingredient AVO benzone is the one that protects best against UVA. So, and it's actually not super, super toxic, but as my mother just learned when she went to Florida, she used her copper tone. And I'm like, Mom, like, who's your daughter? She's all complaining to me that all her clothes are stained. And she they did laundry there in Florida, and she had called the resort and said, oh my gosh, your washing machine messed up all my clothes. Came home, realized, only my clothes are messed up. My husband's are not. They were using different sunscreens. And so this avobenzone, it doesn't wash off in the water. And if you change out of your swimsuit and put on your clothes, you can't see it get on your clothes until it's washed in water and soap. And then it looks like rust stains all over.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, if you want to talk a pain in the behind, stain all your clothes or you have to wash with soap between your swimsuit and your clothes.
Yeah.
I would rather just put sunscreen on with my hand, personally.
Yeah. So it may be just a mind shift of realizing, one, the spray-on may be more convenient, but it's not going to be convenient when you get sunburned because you're avoiding the chemicals that block UVB. Two, it may be increasing your chances of cancer, that's the whole point of wearing the sunscreen. Right. And then two,
it's not a good balance.
Yeah. And then three, if you're choosing the least toxic of them, you'll have other negative side effects that are also inconvenient because then you have to go spend your money on new clothes.
Exactly. Well, in the spray, so the spray actually has some dangers beyond your skin because if, when you spray that stuff, you can smell it. if you can smell it, like a smell is a physical thing. It's particles and atoms and molecules in the air. So if you can smell it, you're inhaling it. And if this stuff is like either super not safe or sketchy at the best to put on your skin, is that safe to inhale? No, it is not.
And I can taste it. Like, we have a rule. No, if someone's using spray sunscreen around me, outside. Because
for sure.
It lingers. I feel like I'm eating it. Yeah. So that's a good point. You're not just getting it through your skin. You're getting it other ways too. Okay.
Yeah. So for your husband, I would get him a nice long sleeve red
I'm just
shirt.
going to show him this. Yeah. Maybe he'll believe it coming from you.
There's a cool video that biochemist I did the interview with. He goes to the pool and does this great shot of himself with the spray sunscreen and some WD-40. He sprays the WD-40 and lights a blowtorch. Sprays the spray sunscreen, lights the blowtorch. It's incredibly flammable. There have been reports of like men who have sprayed it on and then gone grilling and lit themselves on fire, and children that's similar. So it's there are multiple reasons to stay away from the sprays.
Okay, so let's say we've committed to a mineral sunscreen.
Good job.
Yeah. So they're all kinds of zinc are equal, right? Like, it's okay just to get any zinc sunscreen?
Pretty close. So you can almost just look at the active ingredients, and if you see zinc oxide, you're good. In an effort to make sunscreen more clear and nicer looking aesthetically to apply, companies have broken the particles of zinc down further and further and further. So you've got zinc oxide particles, which is like, the old school like lifeguard with the white on their nose. Like, that's straight zinc. Like, it's literally black. It is the black tarp. It blocks the sun. And then to make it into a sunscreen that has any chance of being applied on your whole body, has to be broken down into pretty small particles. They're measured in nanometers. So anything, I think it's over 100 nanometers it can be called micronized. So it's fairly small, but still not small enough to actually go into your skin. On the other hand, less than 100 nanometers is called nanoparticles, and those are small enough to be absorbed, and really research is still being done on this, but the prevailing thought is we're not quite sure if that's safe. So you do want to watch for non-nano particles of zinc. And I mean, again, brands who like really know what they're doing, if they're using non-nano particles, they're going to say it, or you'll be able to at least search online. But typically on the tube, it'll say non-nano.
So you
somewhere
want to look
out there,
for
and then you're good.
And if
right.
if it is nano zinc, it'll probably say something like spreads well or
clear.
Clear. Yeah. So those are some red flags to look for, but you definitely want to see the non-nano zinc.
Yes. And there are some brands that will say, spread goes on clear or whatever, and it's still non-nano, but those can be red flags. They're not, those words aren't regulated. Just like natural isn't regulated. So they can just kind of say whatever they want. But they can't say, what's interesting is that I think in 2013, the FDA, after like 20 years of talking about how they were going to change regulations for sunscreen, finally did say some things officially. So tubes of sunscreen can no longer say waterproof, because nothing is waterproof. They can only say water resistant, and they have to say to 40 minutes or 80 minutes, and that's like a specified test that has to be done to FDA regulations. And then they also, what is the other thing?
Can they not say sweat proof or? I
think so. Yeah, they can't say anything like totally proof. Yeah, sweat proof or waterproof. And then they said that they were going to outlaw SPFs over 50, like those ones SPFs that are like 80, 90, 100, because those high SPF numbers make consumers feel super safe. Like, oh, I have an SPF 100. I can now go out in the hot sun with the UV index of, massively high and stay out for 8 hours, and then they're getting sunburned because the SPF numbers aren't an exponential increase. They're not the way they seem. So like a 30 blocks about 96 point something % of the rays, a 50 blocks like 97. So 100 blocks 98. Like, it's not that much better than 50, but it feels that way to the consumer. The FDA did not actually come down officially and say that yet. So you can still see those super high numbers, But I mean, so that's just like more chemicals for very little reward.
So that's more of a marketing ploy to get you to think, oh, this SPF 70 is way better than this 15. Mm-hmm. So is a 15? Yeah. I mean, is that okay?
For many people, 15 will be enough. If you've got light skin, I would go 30. But like I said, 30 blocks, 96 point something % of rays. So between 30 and 50, you're not getting.
And didn't that biochemist say anything over 30 is silly? Like, that's just a silly.
It's foolish. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important misconception to understand, especially when you are choosing between 80 different sunscreens and you may feel like you're getting more protection, but what you're really getting, you just said, is more chemicals that really aren't giving you that much more of a benefit. Mm-mm. And if you see things like waterproof or sweat-proof or clear, those are other claims to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, waterproof should be literally illegal. Like, they can't even put that on there.
Yeah.
But they can say water resistant.
Right. So what if someone has an infant and they're like, okay, I'm not going to do the chemical or the spray sunscreen. I've got my non-nano zinc. Some people even feel like, oh, I shouldn't take my kids outside. And if I do take my kids outside, I can't use sunscreen. Are there any sunscreens that are there things to look out for to increase safety if you're using it on an infant? Or is it fine as long as you're following these policies we've just kind of spread out?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my top recommended, none of the ingredients are red flags for infants. The thing with zinc oxide, and one of the reasons that I lean toward zinc oxide rather than just titanium dioxide, is that zinc oxide is rated for babies under 6 months. If you look at a tube of Desitin diaper cream, what's the active ingredient? It's zinc oxide. So it's not only rated for baby skin, it's rated for sensitive parts of baby skin. And, like you could put Desitin on yourself, it just doesn't rub in very well as a sunscreen. So I always look for zinc oxide, and then if you can pronounce all the other ingredients, like cabana and raw elements, there are a couple that are food. Like they almost joke, but it's true. If you were stranded on a desert island, you could eat it. If you had nothing else to eat, it wouldn't taste good. Right. But it wouldn't hurt you. Whereas other sunscreens are not edible. So if it's good for your body, it's good for your skin and okay for babies. Generally,
if you look at you go ahead.
Well, you don't want babies out too long. You know what I mean? But if you're out on a boat and you have your baby with you, a hat and some sunscreen, like some good zinc oxide sunscreen, should be not a problem.
So versus if you look at a chemical spray on the back, what does it say about use for infants?
Yeah, it says never under 6 months.
So that's a pretty big clue right there. Mm-hmm. So 2 things you mentioned that I really want to touch on. One is you said if you left that sunscreen on, we're talking about zinc oxide mineral sunscreen now. Mm-hmm. If you left it on even the next day, it should still work. So question, why wouldn't you be showering all that stuff off with soap?
Well, you should. But not all of us get a shower every day, Lori. We have 4 kids.
Well, there's one thing. So there's one thing that's important to note. I wanted to make sure everyone knows is okay, so I'll just back up.
Oh, I think I see where you're going.
Yeah, So should we just, the second we walk outside, lather on the sunscreen?
So we're talking about vitamin D here, which I almost slid into with the babies because my 3rd child was born in the middle of the summer and he was a little bit jaundiced. He was a little bit yellow. And I just took him out right at noon, 1 o'clock every day and stripped him to a diaper and laid him on his belly for 5 to 7 minutes, flipped him over. It was like cooking a hamburger patty, 5 to 7 minutes. I mean, no sunscreen. Skin never got pink. I was very, very careful. I mean, I don't want him to burn, but vitamin D is very important and definitely best obtained from the sun. Any sunscreen, chemical or mineral, most sources say, will block the vitamin D, or at least the bulk of it. So for me, I tend to try to let my kids run around a little bit without it. I'm very like it's always an equation. How long are we going to be out? How much shade is there? What time of day is it? What time of year is it? And I'm basically just trying to figure out, like, do I think they will burn in the time they're outside? If so, sunscreen. Otherwise, bring on some vitamin D.
Awesome. And then what happens if, like you said, we meet the ideal of, okay, we go outside, we got sunscreen on, we're doing this all day, and we go inside and we all just shower and lather up with soap to get all that off of us?
Yeah, they say that vitamin D continues to absorb in over like 24 hours, like a long time. And so you do reduce your absorption of vitamin D if you use soap right away after being in the sun. Sometimes you get too many rules and you start feeling a little too legalistic about life. But
Yeah.
in general, I do want to just encourage people, like, the sun is not something to be afraid of all the time.
Awesome. So sunscreen isn't the only thing that you're interested in cleaning up in your house, right? In fact, kitchen stewardship is all about cleaning up the food in our kitchen. And one thing that you have amazing resources over are how to really take processed food that we're kind of used to if we're on a standard American diet and tweak it just a little bit to have a homemade version of that food in your kitchen. And one lab that I have my holistic wellness pathway students do is I have them pick any processed food meal and just switch it to the exact same meal with homemade ingredients and compare all of the nutrients. And they're so shocked to see how, most people, when they want to get healthy, they think they have to restrict everything and eliminate everything and completely change their lives. But I have them do that lab to see how you can eat literally the same food, just a homemade version of it, and get so many more nutrients. And so one of your books, I got that book and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the key to homemade food without having to shift your whole life. So can you tell us a little bit about that book and some tips you have for taking, if you're on this standard American diet, easy ways that you can just take the same food and have it in your kitchen and the benefits of that?
Sure, you bet. Well, the book Lori is talking about is called Better Than a Box, and the idea is transforming processed foods into, more wholesome homemade foods. And in particular, those recipes where, like, you're using a recipe and you're cooking, but inside the recipe are things like a can of cream of mushroom soup or a box of stovetop stuffing. And so you're like, it's like sabotaging your from scratch efforts. And so it can be really hard to switch those recipes up to be completely homemade. And it grew out of really the whole mission of kitchen stewardship. Why I started is like being a good steward of all your gifts, your environment, your budget, your time. And moms I would talk to just felt so stretched and stressed. Like, if I buy organic food, it's stretching my budget. If I make stuff from scratch, now I don't have time. And like, it just seems like everything's constantly pulling on us in our culture, these busy moms. And so my mission is just to tell moms, like, take some baby steps. Don't try to do it all at once. Give yourself some grace. Like, if you can do one thing tomorrow better than you did today, applaud that and celebrate it and kind of integrate it into your life. I just got an email yesterday that was like, perfect example. She said, I'm really trying to be healthy and I just want to cut out all the sugar and all the processed foods, but I've kind of tried that before. And then we like rebound harder the other way. And that's what I kind of try to tell her is like, you don't want to get on a wagon that you can get off of. You want to have one little step at a time and integrate it into your life so that if something doesn't work, like just one little thing goes instead of like exploding back to, hamburger helper every night and box waffles every morning or whatever. So Better Than a Box, like I literally had readers email me their favorite recipes that had processed foods and I would reverse engineer them. So it's all about just figuring out, what's in there. So like a box of onion soup mix, there's not much in there. There's a lot of weird additives in a box of onion soup mix, some dried onion and a lot of salt. And so for that, like I'll teach people to caramelize onions to bring out all those layers of flavor and kind of that umami stuff in that's already in the onion. It just needs to be unlocked. And, add a few spices and a little bit of salt. And usually people like those meals better than when you just throw in a beef bouillon cube or a box of onion soup mix. Takes a little longer, but it's so much worth it. So yeah, learning to make a roux and a bechamel, to make a homemade cream of whatever soup opens a ton of those easy recipes to yourself.
So much better too. And yeah, those are things that growing up, we always cooked at home. We grew up really low income. So we always cooked at home, but it was always out of a box, out of a can. And so there were things I thought only came out of a box or out of a can.
Sure.
Like spice mixes and sauce mixes. And the French onion soup was my favorite because it tastes so good. But then once you make it homemade, when you think the only place you can get it is out of a package, it tastes so much better. And so it's a great way. I love the way you call it reverse engineering, because that's really what you do. You look at the ingredients, pick the ones out that are real, and then cook them.
Pretty much, yeah, and figure out how to add maybe a little extra flavor.
Yeah. So you mentioned that as moms, we feel stretched thin. And so one thing that will happen once you commit to cooking at home is you will have a little less time. So what are some little resources we have running around that we could use to help us out?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you're a mom, you've got kids, and by a certain age, they can become helpful, which is vital to your survival and theirs, really. I mean, if you're going to raise kids, I mean, you could work your behind off and stress out for 18 years, pushing real food on these kids and making all the homemade food. And I read a hilarious quote the other day. It said, parenting is harder now because childhood is getting shorter. Kids really are being met with at age 9 what a generation ago would have been at age 12, so on and so forth. And parenting is getting longer because it used to be at 18, everyone was excited to get out of the house. And now at 26, they're like, oh, mom loves to cook. She cooks great. She'll do my laundry. So like on both ends, you're kind of getting pulled. So I don't want to still be cooking for my kids when they're 26, other than as a gift to them. You know, I don't want it to be the given. And I don't want them to leave my house and not have any clue how to eat. So we do it with starting as early as possible. Even at age 2, we start imparting kind of these real food cooking skills to our kids. And I know you have had your girls go through our Kids Cook Real Food e-course, and they are awesome. I've seen pictures of them working and being creative and making up their own concoctions. Some I think were edible and some probably were iffy, right?
I try them all.
That's because you're a good mom.
But yeah, one of the quotes I love is from Joel Salatin, and he's with Polyface Farms. Mm-hmm. He's all about sustainable, environmentally friendly, nutrient-friendly farming. And I love this quote when he said, one of the biggest disservices we did as a culture, as a country, was to take away responsibility and jobs from our kids. And that's a really inflammatory statement, because I think we in this culture have this pressure of let kids be kids. They should be running around and outside, and we as moms should be doing everything for them. And while, yes, they should be getting to be kids, like you said, there are some parts where they're having to grow up too fast. There are other skills that they used to have by age 5 that now they don't get into their 20s. And so, like you said, we're doing them an enormous disservice by not imparting these skills, these life skills onto them. And that's one of the reasons why your kids' cooking course is so incredible. And you say it's really going to give you more time in the kitchen. And it does. Like if I have something that needs to be chopped, my 6-year-old chops it. If I have eggs that need to be cooked, my 9-year-old does it. And you guys notice I'm not talking about 12 and 15-year-old teenagers. These are little kids, and she is chopping and cooking. One morning I woke up and my kids had sausage and eggs made. Like, these are the skills that you learn. So I think a huge misconception, and this was really powerful for me, the very first class you have of the kids cooking course is you get them with a peeler. Like the 3-year-olds with a peeler. Because in my head, I'm like, 3-year-olds can just wipe off the table, right? A peeler is sharp. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a peeler. So tell us some of the skills kids really can have at these young ages to help us let go of, it's our fears. The kids are ready. They're ready. It's us who aren't ready. So go over some of the skills, how they're divided up. What sorts of things can we learn from your kids' cooking course that can help us and them and our food?
Sure. Well, we divide the class into 3 kind of age levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And the beginner, loosely we say 2 to 5. One thing that surprised me actually is that many members start all their ages right at the beginning, even the 12-year-olds, because they're like, they don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want them to miss anything. So the very, very littlest kids, like my son, my youngest, is 2.5. So he's learned careful carrying, like how to carry real glass plates and dishes around. So now he can both set and clear the table. Huge help. Most of the time, not that he will always. I can't teach mind control, but he has the skills. And little tiny ones can use butter knives to cut quite a few things, from bananas to melon slices to even, cooked vegetables for like a potato salad. And then pouring is a big one. And that's really good for, and again, this is 2. This is really, really young kids, but they can pour their own milk or juice, or, he'll pour his milk into his oatmeal or whatever. And just the kind of self-esteem that's built from that, even if that at 2, it's not really a time saver yet, but you're giving them the agency to think that I can do things for myself. Starting at 3.
Lets them know they're part of the family. Like they're important to this family. And I think that is a huge thing that's lacking, that our youth feel empty and purposeless. And so they then go try to find that purpose elsewhere. When if you start them at 2 years old, knowing like, we need you at dinner time. We need you to make this family function.
Yeah. No participation awards.
Yeah.
Around here. We don't say good job for every little scribble, like I want to say great job for something that's real. Yeah. So we got to give them real things to do. Yeah. So as soon as, depending on the maturity of the child, by age 3 or 4, and I've seen actually 2-year-olds do this too. I just haven't quite with mine yet. Mm-hmm. But we get them peeling. We get them measuring flat tablespoons and flat cups and stuff. And what I love for little kids is that mom could be like, if you just have little kids, mom could be cutting the vegetables with a sharp knife. The little one could be measuring the spices that she's going to use in that veggie saute or in those pumpkin muffins or whatever. And I have my little ones, we make like homemade spice mixes and like gluten-free flour blends where you're just like, 4 cups of this and 3 cups of that. And that's kind of nice because if it's a little off, it's not a huge deal too. So that's why I can have my little kids like set up at the table, and it might take them half an hour, but I don't have to hover once I've taught them how to measure flat and how to do things appropriately. And then a lot of like lettuce tearing and kale. If you do anything with greens, that's great for little kids because they can wash them, pat them dry, or spin them in a salad spinner and tear them up and stuff. So that's our little kids. And then depending on maturity, somewhere around age 4, 5, 6, or 7, your kids, but we give them sharp knives. We get them at the stove. And that's when they really start being, truly productive members of the family.
Absolutely. And like my 6 and 9-year-old, they can make their own smoothies. You teach how to use blenders and food processors. Like it's just like they can cook almost everything I can cook. They can cook, and they're 6 and 9. It's really incredible. So something that people have the option of doing with the class is signing up for the VIP package with the Facebook group. And I just really want to talk about how important that is. And I'm going to do it with a kind of sarcastic question. So it's always a joy cooking with your kids in the kitchen, right?
That is a sarcastic question. Not always. Not always. Nope.
No stress.
I think it's hard. It's hard for me, and it's hard for a lot of parents to think about the kids are going to make a bigger mess. I have to watch to make sure they're safe. I might have to help them. I actually a lot of moms enjoy their time in the kitchen. They're like, yes, go. Mom has to make dinner now. Get out of my space. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of painful to let the kids in. And it's a little bit scary, as much as even me, as the cooking class teacher, I know up here my kids can make dinner, but I still get a little jittery, like, well, how about I hover? How about I help you or whatever? And then sometimes I need to just rip the Band-Aid off and like, okay, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go in another room. I know I've trained you. Go ahead, make dinner. But it's like psychologically, it's difficult.
Absolutely. And it's something I didn't really predict. Like I was gung-ho about the cooking class and so were they. But once we got in there and we're putting food to the table, like rubber to the road, right? I was so surprised about how much fear and stress and anxiety I felt. And the Facebook group was crucial because we could support each other and like not feel awful about ourselves for not wanting our kids in the kitchen.
We're all in it together for sure.
It was good just to know it's normal, but also that it's so worth it because now they come home and they make their lunches, they make their breakfast, sometimes they make dinner. And so the learning process is hard and it was so important to have that support system and it's worth it.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I hear from members a lot that like, again, they know up here, they're like, okay, I'm listening. I get it. It's going to be worth it someday. And, one gal actually, she enjoyed the course so much she works for me now. But she was just saying this week, she's like, I didn't think it would happen so fast. She's like, after the very first class, like I invested a lousy half hour or whatever. And that very week, my kids are being able to help with veggie prep. And like that half hour was returned to me within like 7 days. She was like, couldn't even believe how fast it happened. So that's really encouraging. Like it's not only a long-term investment.
Oh yeah, I didn't take this class 5 years ago. It was like recently, and the payback is there immediately. But I think it's important to be upfront about the resistance even we feel of getting them in the kitchen and to not feel bad about it. Because man, moms guilt themselves about every not rainbow feeling we have, and it's normal. And another wonderful benefit is that my kids eat way more food than they used to. So your spice lesson, where you have them smell the spices and figure out what's pleasant and unpleasant, they use herbs, they use spices like thyme and sage and things they would never have used before. So it does increase their nutrition.
That's so cool. Yeah, a lot of people tell me that like, because it's video, seeing my little kids, and we had like some of our neighbors are in the class too, like seeing other little kids eating things like celery and salad and tomatoes. It's just this like magical peer pressure where they might not love it, but we're getting super picky eaters to take like one bite, which is a huge victory for that family.
That was a brilliant part of your class because I think if it would just have been you teaching it, then the kids wouldn't have had that group mentality. But it's you and your kids' friends doing the videos. And so that empowers the kids to be like, oh, they can do that. I can do that. And another thing I just realized just through rehashing what you just said about how it's immediate benefits that week, that just shows you how much our kids really do want to be a part of the family and contribute and have purpose. And so I love, it really helps mind, body, and spirit of everyone. And so it's not just like a kid's cooking class. It's a really important family bonding growth class for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Quality time and life skills abound.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for donating your time. I know you're so busy, like you said, 4 kids, all these classes and stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And one thing I love to end with is there a topic or question that you wish someone would ask so you can talk about? Like, what's the one thing you wish you could just spill the beans about or just talk about, but no one ever asks?
Well, ironically, I was thinking of saying, do you like being in the kitchen with your kids? But you went there.
That was huge for me.
There already.
I stole your answer.
You did.
Sorry.
I don't know if I have another one. I mean, I guess people are sometimes afraid to ask, like, do you ever cheat? And we do. We do, totally. I mean, we do eat out. And, it's kind of that thing where I said at the very beginning, I said, some people say, you can't avoid everything, so who cares? Give up. Well, when we're at home, like, I'm going to be pretty darn good, and we're going to make almost everything from scratch. And, we buy some processed foods with as wholesome as ingredients, as I can find. And then when we're out, if my kid has a hot dog, I don't like it, but I don't quite karate chop it out of their hands.
Right.
Kind of a little close, but
that was
hot dogs. That's a little extreme example. I don't really like hot dogs, but like, we'll walk down the street and go out for ice cream, and I don't check every ingredient. It's just ice cream, like, we eat junk food sometimes.
good. Yeah, you did that quiz one time that was like, what would you be embarrassed about that's in your shopping cart if someone you knew walked by? I loved it. So I think that was a good way to end. It's just, you can't be perfect, but you can do what you can do. And every little thing that you can do matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if we do order a pizza, I'm the mom who has, like, the baby carrots and the cherry tomatoes and stuff first.
Right.
I try.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to tell us before we say goodbye?
No, it was a pleasure being here. And of course, anyone can just pop by kidscookrealfood.com or kitchenstewardship.com, depending on what you're looking for.
Yep, and we'll put those links down below this video so you can go check out all the amazing resources. I mean, there's seriously so much. I can't tell you how different our home life is because of everything at this blog. So definitely check it out. And thank you for using your life to help make ours cleaner and easier and better.
Well, thanks for letting me come on. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Weight Free Wellness podcast. You can find all sorts of helpful links that these ladies referred to by going to weightfreewellness.com and checking out, this is episode number 66. And there's helpful links. Sign up for Lori's class if you'd like to learn how to make your own sunscreen. It's very rewarding and saves you lots of money as well, which is always good, right? So again, that's at weightfreewellness.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.